Have you ever wondered what your future would look like? You might also ask what our country will look like in the future too. Today, I'm going to let you know how you can shape the future, not only for yourself, but also for the people around you. Voting is something that many of us as Americans take for granted, with a large portion of the population not taking part in elections. We miss out on many opportunities to influence our communities, not only close to home, but around the whole country as well. Even though it is our right to vote as American citizens, many people choose to stay home on election days anyways. And with this first graph obtained from the U.S. Census Bureau, we can see that in 2016, which was the most recent presidential election between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, that only 61.4% of the voting age population actually participated in the election. So this means that nearly 40% of the voting age population didn't cast a ballot. Even when the voting peaked in 1992 with the election between Bill Clinton and George Bush Sr., there still was only 67.7% of the population that took part, which still leaves over 30% that didn't vote. This is an issue because we don't get an accurate representation of who the whole country wants to be elected. In the second graph, right here, also obtained from the U.S. Census Bureau, we can see the percentage of voter participation for specific age groups. We can see that the young adult category, which is 18 to 24 years of age, have consistently voted at lower rates throughout history, with only 38% of the young adult population participating in the 2012 election. Whereas the oldest category, which is 65 years and over, having 69.7% of their population that voted. The trend from 1992 is also evident in this graph as well, where voters spiked in each and every category. When doing some research, the media seems to have influenced this election a lot, with television ratings spiking during these times and popular TV shows starting a movement to influence more people to vote. One standout is MTV running a campaign called Rock the Vote that influenced many younger voters to participate in the election. And we can see that spike here. And although in my experience, these young voters aren't exposed to politics as much as they should. When I was taking government in high school, it was only a semester class, so it was half the time of a regular class. And we didn't get the proper information we needed on how to register to vote. In my opinion, I feel like we should implement a system that when students turn the age of 18, they should be guided through the voting registration process in school and get more education on how voting works in our government. And this brings me to the third and final graph of the presentation. And this graph represents the voter turnout rates by education in our country, where the postgraduate students contribute the highest percentage, and then some with some college experience in the second position, and followed by high school graduates in third, and people who haven't even received a high school degree in the last position. This confirms my point that we are not educated enough in early education about the importance of voting and how to vote. Because when you receive more education after high school, the numbers increase a great amount, as we can see. So imagine how many more voters that would turn out if we inform the younger population about voting earlier in their academic careers. And there are also many other levels of government that we can vote for as U.S. citizens. Of course, we have the presidential election that we've been talking about throughout this speech. And that takes place every 4 years, and it is the largest election in our country. We also have congressional, state, and local elections, with congressional elections taking place every 2 years, and state and local races that happen nearly every year. These are perhaps way more important than the presidential election because they can affect our community in a more direct way. Some of these things can include state infrastructure such as public schooling and transportation, and other things like taxes and welfare. And these things affect our everyday lives, and we should pay close attention to these elections when they take place. We can also see in this third graph again how the turnout is much lower for the years that the presidential election doesn't happen. So for instance, in 2014 and 2010, these are years that there is no presidential election. So this shows that many people aren't aware that these elections take place as often. And it is a shame because of the huge impact these elections can have on the state's communities. So we need to get more educated and figure out when these elections take place so we can have at least the same voter turnout during these years as we do when the presidential elections take place. And with how easy it is to register by going online and filling out the online voter registration, there's no excuse on why we're not voting with the amount of technology we have. Along with this, it is very important that when you participate in voting, that you do your research. Make sure you know tons of information about each and every candidate to see which one you like the best. That is why it's so important to vote for who you want in a candidate, not necessarily their party affiliation, which is a lot of times what people do in our country. Whoever's policy appeals more to you and that will help you more directly is the choice that you should go for. And many people also don't think that their vote will matter because they think one vote won't influence the whole election. But as we can see, with that 40% that don't vote, whenever they do participate, the whole election could change dramatically. That's why it's so important that we exercise our American right to vote every chance that we get, because it makes a huge difference whether you realize it or not. And now that you know how important voting is in our country, we can go out and make a difference in our community at many different levels of government. So spread the word. The more people you ask to vote, the better the voter turnout will be in a more accurate election that can take place. So get out and vote for our state and local elections on August 6th and in the presidential election on November 3rd at your local polling stations.